This is Continuum Drag, a podcast where we watch sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between. This week, Electric City.
For the uninformed, my name is Cleveland Carr. And yes, I'm a grid operative. I live in the shadows, between truth and consequence. Here in the Electric City.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast that only eats its onion soup cold. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
All in service to all.
All in service to all. That's the motto of our podcast.
I've always said that.
You're always saying that.
I'm saying it all the time. During the day, I'm saying it. At night.
Right before bed.
Yeah. We just lay over before our head hits that pillow, just all in service to all.
And that's how you get that good night's sleep. That's why you get that beauty rest.
Yeah. Actually, this is unrelated to that, but actually what I say before bed is I was just watching this old movie called Valdez is Coming, which is a Burt Lancaster Western based on an Elmer Leonard book. Burt Lancaster's playing a Mexican, so you have to, if that's a problem, I wouldn't suggest watching that movie. But there's a character in it, the villain at one point, and he's with the lady in bed, and just before they're going to bed, he leans over to her and he goes, "You bitch." And then they start making out. And it made me laugh every time. So I've been saying that at night just because it's the funniest thing ever. So instead of saying all in service to all, that's what I'm saying at night.
Your lucky partner. Your lucky partner.
It's just so ludicrous. And then she was like, "Ooh, let's kiss now." I'm like, who would do that?
Oh, dear. Well, enough about Valdez. What was it called?
Valdez is Coming. Something like that. Anyways, look it up. Burt Lancaster.
Burt Lancaster, everybody. Now, this week we are watching 20 episodes of Tom Hanks's short-form series, Electric City.
I mean, 20 episodes is misleading.
Well, it basically breaks into a 90 minutes, so I basically am treating it like a TV movie. I figured that would make sense this way.
Mm-hmm.
And it was released in 2012 on Yahoo Screen.
Okay, I saw that. I have no memory of Yahoo Screen. I don't know what Yahoo Screen is. I'm assuming it was like an early precursor to a lot of these streamers, but they were like, you know what we should do? Make it for people on their phones.
Well, would it surprise you? We've already watched a Yahoo Screen for this podcast.
Did we really? Which was it? Was it that other cartoon?
No, it was Other Space.
Really? And that was all, I don't remember.
Yeah, that was a Yahoo Screen series as well.
Wow. Oh, so they've had two questionable series at least.
At least. There's a few more. I wrote one down in our notes somewhere for a ghost hunting one. They did two, apparently.
Well, so it wasn't all short form, because I kind of assumed that's what it was because of this.
No, just this one. Of all of them, only this one for some reason.
Tom Hanks was like, I only write in 30-second increments. That's what the episodes are.
Well, I had heard about this particular series on a different podcast, the Dead Eyes podcast, which is quite good if you haven't listened. It's a very different premise to ours. But in it came up, and it was like a passion project Tom Hanks had. And I read a little bit of the Wikipedia. It's something he'd been kicking around at his company for a long time. They've had different iterations of it. And it's a really classic thing. It's like an idea or a premise they had. And then finally they just found a way to like move it forward. And it was like, I guess we'll just tweak it to make it work because, there's so few avenues for us. And so they like took the premise and like turned it into this. I don't think it was ever intended to be this. We can discuss it. But like it was, I don't think ever built to be 3-minute long episodes, spread over 20 episodes. So, it's a bit awkward as a result. I think just because it's hard to watching this, I'm like, it's so hard to do 3-minute episodes where you have to have like a little narrative arc every 3 minutes and then move on.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
Especially hard to watch in a row.
Yeah, I mean, again, we'll go through it, I'm sure, but yes, there's a feeling of it being a little bit disjointed. Sometimes it's actually quite fine, but I actually found the first half worse than the second half for that, of like really building it, and I was like, okay, let's just let it breathe for a second before cutting to a different person,
Yeah, no, they've got a lot to cover. It's actually a sprawling cast, a sprawling conspiracy. In some ways, it's really not built for this format. So that's, I think, really working against it in a lot of ways. But we'll get into it. It was released on July 17th, 2012 on Yahoo Screen, as previously mentioned. And Jordan, you want to know what's going on in the world? Well, Electric City was on Yahoo Screen.
Yeah, what was happening in 2012?
July 14th, CERN discovers a new particle, the Higgs boson.
Oh, okay. 2012.
Yeah, you remember that.
I do.
And July 15th, Psy releases his mega hit song, Gangnam Style. We all remember where we were.
That was a mega hit. It was everywhere.
It really took off in a way Electric City did not.
They should have had it as like the theme song.
That would have changed the tide for sure.
Would have changed the tone as well.
And we've only watched one other property in 2012 for Continuum Drag. It was a TV movie. Can you guess what that might have been?
Okay, I got one guess, and I know it's going to drive you crazy because I can't remember the title. But what was the one? Was there like a George R. R. Martin or something thing we watched?
I know what you're thinking of, Winter Dragon. It was not Winter Dragon.
No, what was it?
It was Mockingbird Lane.
Oh, I wouldn't have remembered that. Yeah, the
that Munsters reboot.
Munsters reboot. What a time.
We should watch the other Munsters reboot at some point that Rob Zombie did.
Oh, didn't that look like absolutely horrific?
I don't even think it was a reboot. It really was just a standalone movie. It was, he just wanted to go back to the Munsters for whatever reason.
Yeah, he's just like, I like it. Guys are like, are you going to do like your crappy, like scary clown version of things? He's like, no, I'll do it straight.
Yeah, just going to do it in normal Munsters. I love the Munsters.
He's like, oh, are you a good director? He's like, no, I'm in fact not a good director.
I mean, I haven't seen it, so who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe it's
amazing. I shouldn't say that. Maybe it's great. I take it back.
Maybe his love of Munsters just like comes through. He made an Addams Family equivalent, but just nobody knows.
You never know.
I mean, essentially, I think that is the issue with trying to reboot the Munsters. It was just a ripoff of the Addams Family, so it was like really hard to make that.
I will not to get in. I will argue against that because they both. Came
oh, you're
out,
going to defend?
Well, no. They both came out like a week from each other. It's one of those like, Armageddon, Deep Impact sort of things.
Oh, you're telling me there was no influence from the Addams Family?
Hey, you check it out. They both came out like a week from each other.
Yeah, but it was also that cartoon for a long time, or not the cartoon, the comic strip.
Oh, you might be right.
Adaptation.
I'll take it back. Someone, please write in.
Someone send us a history of the Munsters, please.
We can't possibly look it up on the internet.
Send us the book on the history of the Munsters. What I love, Jordan, this might be the first time I've ever seen you drinking a Peroni during a recording. It's really classy.
It's very classy, I know. Just keeping it loose.
You're loose. You're ready. You're ready to go. All right. Well, here's the IMDb summary for Electric City. A view of the future of civilization presented through the lens of provocative themes such as energy consumption, freedom of information, crime, and punishment.
I don't think that's really explains anything about the show.
I don't think so either.
Also, I don't know if I agree with all those themes. I will agree, like, they talk about electricity and transmissions and things ad nauseum. But, I don't know about that. Who was that wrote that description?
It was on the IMDb. It was just whoever put no one wrote it. It was just probably promotional material for the show.
What I would say is it's a possibly post-apocalyptic, or at least sort of...
Oh, definitely post-apocalyptic.
Like future where I would say there's a limited use of technology in whatever new society has formed based on whatever has happened in the past, which we don't know. And, things like there doesn't seem to be firearms and things like normal conveniences we have, like electric heat and electric lights and stuff aren't common at all. So this is a future where technologies are different than what we're used to, even though it's in the future. Yeah.
Well, there's a little bit of an opening monologue at the start to sort of establish the place, the world we're living in. Primary takes place in Electric City, the primary city. It's a megapolis of some sort, or at least metropolis of some sort, that is self-sustaining and seems to be self-contained. It was, as you said, built after some sort of apocalyptic war. We do get that one great flashback where that woman explodes.
Oh, I'll say that for this thing. When it gets violent, it's like...
So violent.
Super violent. And you're like, oh, that's a little shocking. Like, really, really gruesome. Like, people exploding and, like, shriveling and tons of stabbing.
And the core resource in this world, or resource scarcity, I guess, is electricity. That's what it's all about. It's like generating electricity. Everyone needs to be doing it. Everyone needs to be conserving it. It's interesting. If you think about it too hard, you're just like, it seems like there'd be other resources that'd be more important, but for whatever reason in this world, that's the core. Everyone's worried about electricity.
You know what? It reminded me a little bit of the world. A little bit like, remember that Kevin Costner movie, The Postman?
A little
bit of that.
No, it's truly, it's kind of like a rebuilt world where you're back to almost pioneer days, but there's a little bit of it's a little more cyberpunky, this one.
I would agree,
Plus the art style and like the costume style of the characters is very like 60s art deco, so like they like it's very disorienting in some ways, because it's like the Postman, but if they went back in time to the 60s, but there was no electricity. There's only a little bit of electricity.
I'm glad you mentioned the art. It's actually kind of an interesting art style where like people are a little bit caricatured. Like, you know, if the men are muscular, they're quite muscular. Or if someone's short and squat, they're like kind of look like a penguin or something. But they have this dark outline around all the characters, sort of like Archer in that kind of style, where it's like purposely focusing on the dimensions of the character.
Yeah, I did feel like it had an art style that I recognized from a certain period of time, like Clone High or something kind of had a similar, yeah, for sure. And off the top of the series, what we see is we see what a jail is like. If you go to jail, you have to get put in a cell to ride a stationary bike to pay back society by generating power. So that's part of how power is generated here. Prisoners on stationary bikes.
I kind of like that. I thought that was good.
It was fun. It sets the tone. It sets the world up a little bit. And we quickly learned that electricity is run by a cabal of elderly women known as the Knitting Circle.
Yeah, Knitting Society.
Society, thank you. Society.
Yeah.
And they're not like elected officials. There's elected officials, there's like a government, there's rules, there's like a police force, but they're actually the ones kind of like, they're the deep state. They're pulling the strings behind the scenes.
I'm glad you brought them up, because it's like you see them, like why they're called the Knitting Society is they're like a group of older women who they sort of do a lot of flashbacks. We'll see that it seems like they were sort of like rebels or freedom fighters at a certain point when they were younger, and now they're older, and you're right, they're pulling the strings, but for some reason they're still all knitting together, and I didn't know what that was. Was that just supposed to be like kind of a funny, interesting thing, because there wasn't really an effect to it?
No, just to give it some like character more than anything. Called them the Knitting Society. And their core concern seems to be, will there be enough electricity for winter? So that's why they're always keeping track of electricity usage.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not entirely true. They're also worried about like social uprising and that kind of thing. They're monitoring all of that, but like, you know, everything is focused around electricity in this world. So much so that I believe the police force that we always see is called AMP. Because they're looking after amperage, I guess. And
they seem to be pretty controlled. Like everything seems very government controlled, whether it's through the Knitting Society or whatever. Like everyone is towing the line of the narrative that these groups want to put out to the people.
Yeah, they have the illusion of democracy, but they don't really have it because the Knitting Society is in the background. And
exactly.
The Knitting Society has like this sort of shadow dictatorship, including their own like group of James Bond-esque spies and hitmen known as the Grid Operators.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this of course is our main character, is going to be one of these Grid Operators. But over the course, basically, we'll cover a little background right now. Over the course of the series, as you said, there's a series of flashbacks sort of showing what happened. There's some sort of war. We don't really see what kicked it off, but a war destroyed society. And then post-war, we see how the Knitting Society rose via one character. And we see that, like, in the chaos, she was living by herself. She ended up in a weird religious cult where she murdered the cult leader quite bloodily. And then Electric City sort of gets established with a different group of men running it, but they're kind of a corrupt cabal who use electricity to their whim and kind of are like using it as a way to get whatever they want and like subjugate people. So the Knitting Society, basically, we see them infiltrate the town, seduce all the men, and then murder them all with knitting needles. And that's how they came to power, taking over Electric City. And essentially, they're doing this for the right reasons, I guess. Like they're not we see them as not entirely evil. They're not like an evil society. They're trying to do the best, but they are sort of running it in a similar way to the previous organization, in that they control all the power. They're just trying to use it for good.
Well,
I think the question is,
I think you're right. I think it's the ends justify the means for them. You're right. Like they're hiring, they have contract killers and stuff to get rid of dissidents or whatever. They're like, because again, we need to keep power going, so we need to, or like, people are trying to create their own generator. We have to kill them because we can't lose control of that. So it's like, you're right. Like they have the overall goal in mind, but their methods are not particularly nice.
Yeah, they're not democratic, perhaps.
Yes.
And the main Knitting Society woman we'll come to follow is Ruth Orwell. Mm-hmm. What a name.
Yeah, played by Holland Taylor.
And her Grid Operator, Cleveland Kane? Is that his name?
Cleveland Carr.
Carr. I wrote it down, but I can't read my own writing. Cleveland Carr, a buff, really muscular, really good-looking man, played by Tom Hanks.
Yeah, so I'll say this. There's a couple odd things about this. I think all the voice acting in this is very good, and they have a lot of people you sort of recognize voices without maybe being able to put a face to it, except for Tom Hanks. And I'll say a couple things. I found actually Tom Hanks wrong for this role, weirdly.
It's tough to watch.
It's tough to watch, right? Because he has such a friendly, familial kind of...
There's a reason he played Mr. Rogers.
Yeah. Like, he's someone...
He did. That's where I'm remembering
Yes.
that right. He did
Right.
movies with Rogers. Okay, good.
He's someone who you generally like just because of who he is, and you play that to his effect in movies. But for this character, it's just hard, and I found it...
He's a cold-blooded killer who fucks.
Yeah. And not only that, and you may not agree with me on this, I found almost all the voices felt like a little detached from the animation, and I don't know if it was just the style, but it all felt like I could tell they were all in like a voice booth acting. It just didn't feel organic, at least for me. And I was just like, I can just tell they're actors doing these roles, and they're not doing them badly. There's just like a disjointedness that I found, but and maybe it was just because it was started with Tom Hanks. I was like, I just don't buy you as this character, man.
Yeah, I mean, God bless him. It's his series. He's been working hard to get it going for a long time. You know, it makes sense he'd put himself in the main character to get it made. I'm sure Yahoo Screen's not greenlighting this without him in the middle of it. But it is disjointed because he's, like, the first time we see this character, his shirt's off, his abs are ripped, and then in Tom Hanks' voice comes out, and you're, like, a little disoriented.
Yeah, and it's weird, and I'll be honest, I didn't get over it through the whole thing. Every time he did it, like, he had to do one of these things, like, you're right, like there's a sex scene and stuff, and I was like, oh, I just don't know. I don't think any of this works.
I would love that, though. Tom Hanks should have a late career thing where he gets, like, absolutely steroided up, and does, like, a huge, like, brutal action movie.
Yeah, because that's essentially what this is, if the action movie also spent most of its time world building.
And it opens with Orwell assigning... that was an awkward transition. It opens with Orwell assigning... Cleveland Carr, an extrajudicial killing of this petty criminal and domestic abuser who we just saw like riding that bike earlier. He's been released from prison, and she deems him an undesirable. He's served his time to society, but she still doesn't like him. So Tom Hanks shows up and murders him good. And we also, for the first time, get to hear that in this world, nobody swears. They just say the word expletive.
Okay. It's very odd. It's very odd they do it. And I mean, good on them for like sticking with it, and they like all the characters do it, and they also say like X sometimes when X. They like it's like a short form of that. What is funny though, when the first time they said it, I was like, did someone censor it and make them say that? Like as if like remember you used to watch movies on TV and they'd be censored with people be like, "Hey, get out of my way, you stupid apple." You know, I thought it was one of those at first, but it was like, no, that's like a funny little thing in this world where they all just
part of the world building. They don't swear; they say expletive. Which, you know what? I'll be honest. It eventually just settled in. It didn't bother me that much. But the first couple of times it happened, I was also like, "Excuse me."
Yeah, I know. But you know what? I'll say this as we go through it. They know the world they're building, and they're pretty consistent with it. Whether it's how the characters are acting, how people are interacting in the world, and even stuff like that, the language and stuff. It's all like being really thought out, regardless of how well and effective it is. It's clearly like some care has been taken.
For sure. It just goes to striking the tough balance of the tone of this series because it's quite violent, and it's it is trying to deal with some big issues, but also it's just a little bit twee at the same time. Which like saying expletive and like we're on all kind of this swinging 60s vibe. It's a delicate balance that I don't think it always lands.
Yeah. I think though purposely when you do see the violence, I think that was a choice to be like, this is animated. We can do anything we want, and on top of that, we'll make it over the top as like a jarring thing, and it definitely is that.
Oh, for sure. Overall, though, what this sort of we'll call it a series, a TV movie, whatever it is. The central like kind of plot of it is it's setting the stage for a conspiracy against the state that Cleveland will investigate over the course of the 90 minutes. But there's also kind of, and I'm not going to talk about it very much, there's also the B plot is like this budding romance of this, she's not a radio announcer because radio doesn't exist. She's a wire service announcer.
She's essentially like a newscaster.
Yeah, I don't know the difference between a wire service and a radio, so I was like kind of confused by this whole thing the whole time.
Yeah, well, I think the wire service really is the sort of like, tapping, like Morse code sort of thing.
Okay. But there's a romance between these two characters that like we'll run over the course of it. It's a budding romance, and I only bring it up because my favorite part is with the meet cute where they meet at a book fair, and he's so impressed that she owns 12 whole books.
Yeah, because they sort of they throw it in as you're right, as a meet cute, but it's the I guess the rarity of books, or at least how little people the idea of collecting books is antiquated at this point.
Yeah, I couldn't quite suss that one out because they're like, oh, maybe we'll see you at the next book fair over in the next like neighborhood or something. I was just like, are books rare? Are they not rare? Because it's just so weird to be like, you own 12 books. So I was just like, is that a lot, or is she making fun of her?
Yeah, the impression I got was it's a lot, but you're right. They didn't add on to that, so it was like, oh, or like, does that mean she's spending like a fortune on books, or is it that books like in this future reading is such a luxury that no one does it? I wasn't really sure what the comment was, but they had something to that effect anyway.
Something about books. I guess maybe it's leading into because the idea is like they have enough to be like sort of comfortable, but like there's not enough of everything to go around because there's this gray market that the populace already kind of trades in, and what it is they tap into the wire service that I guess runs through everyone's houses to get the like announcements and stuff, and they're using what they call them. They're called tap. What are they called? Tap coders?
Yeah, they call them. Hold on, I wrote it down.
I can't read my own writing.
The tap coders. Yeah, they're sort of like the free thinkers that try to get around like the social restrictions. You know,
it's basically it seems to be a bit of a gray market. Most of the populace uses it. They basically buy a device on the black market where they can send messages out, being like, "I have extra grapefruit. Does anyone have a battery?" Like they're just kind of like trading on this sort of gray market that the Knitting Society is aware of. Mostly lets happen. That they're a little worried about more people are using it and there's more energy consumption as a result of these like these code tappers, but they're monitoring the situation. But this is kind of where our, I guess, villains, this may be not the right term for them, but the core like antagonist comes in, is these outsiders enter Electric City and they're utilizing this tap coder black market to start building something new, something they call wave units, which I did not understand what these were for too long. And eventually when they're essentially radios, and I was just like, wait, I don't know. What's the difference between wiretaps and radios?
I felt
you
the
just
same.
Explained it.
I think there was some extra knowledge that I think was needed going into it, and I'm glad you said that because I was like, am I just dumb? I don't know why this is better or worse than what they already have, other than maybe it's not on a frequency that's controlled, so it's like, you know, free pirate radio or something. I was like, okay, cool. This is what the stakes are.
It was tough because when they describe them too, they're like, oh, they're like a code tapper. I'm like, or tap coder. I'm like, okay. And they're like, except they can't send, they can only receive. And I'm like, is that better? It sounds worse.
I know.
But no one really not till very late in the game do they explain it. And even when they explain it, I still am just like, I don't know if it's better or worse.
But what did you think of the stakes of that? Of basically this whole world that they spend a long time setting up? Because I kept thinking like, are you guys going to be able to land this? Because I don't know why this is important or why do I care? And at least my feeling by the end was, I don't really think you did.
Yeah, it's tough. It was tough because it was tough to see how this was going to shift society. We'll get to the end to talk about how it did shift society. And it was like, they try to keep it opaque for a long time.
Yeah.
And as you said, these are 3-minute episodes. So there's very little time to like do a lot. Like you have to do quick explanations and then have an action scene and then end the episode, right? So there's really very little time. And particularly when they get to episodes, they're like, we need to move a lot of chess pieces around the board in this conspiracy. They're jumping between characters in 3 minutes, and they kind of have to try to make a little tiny arc in there. It's a real challenge, I think, this series faces, because I would say arguably there are probably 8 to 10 active characters happening in this show at any given time.
Well, I think you're right. And I think one thing that suffers a little bit in this is because they're trying to do that balancing act of, like you're saying, have a little bit of interesting action, progress the story forward, as well as constantly keep jumping back between a lot of characters, and a lot of them like are not that important. Like you could probably have cut them out.
I'll tell you right now, my notes are only about Cleveland because there was no reason to talk about anyone else.
Well, it's like we'll go to say like the kid characters that are tapping and stuff. Like you could take those out of the show easily. They don't do anything.
Well, they're there for world building because they're like the Boy
kids.
Scouts. They're the Boy Scouts, but they work for the cops, which is interesting world building. But they don't have characters. They don't have an arc. They just pop up.
Well, it's a good point because to earlier what I was saying is that because they have such little time, because it's so fast and they have so much to get through, you really get little to no character development. A little bit for Cleveland, a little bit. You learn his backstory and who he is, but like the character, I can't remember, the woman whose husband we'll talk about later, and then she's pregnant, blah, blah, blah. Every single scene, and I clocked it, every scene she mentions, I'm pregnant with his baby, and I'm a mom now, and I have this thing. And she has to keep saying it. I know part of it because of the episodic structure, but also because they don't develop her past that character, and there's nothing else to her. The character's, she's pregnant, she's trying to solve a mystery. That's it, and she's going to tell you that every single time she shows up on screen, because there's nothing else to build.
And she pops up as a major character late. Like, she's around. I couldn't track who she was for most of it, and then very late in the 90 minutes, she gets an arc, she gets a journey, and something becomes very focused on her. And I was like, I barely clocked this character. There are two characters. One, I believe, is her brother, and one is a guy who works at a different radio station, at the wire service. I thought they were the same character for most of the show.
Yeah, it is. It's just, and I think part of it is just because, like you said, there's so many characters. Like, there is so many, and some are important, some are not. Some are kind of there to progress things in the plot. Some are there just to kind of shock you that they get killed. And it's like, it literally, we didn't talk about the actual structure of it. Like, in between the episodes, they kind of show you a map to show you what the world is like, and the camera spins from spot to spot, almost like you're watching
neighborhoods.
Yeah, like you're sort of like on a tabletop game, and it's kind of a cool effect, and it looks neat. You get a sense of stuff. It's just that you're like, someone's like, "Hey, I need a wire," over to another spot, and this person's like, "Ugh, I think we should call the guy," over to another spot. My husband's pregnant. Over another spot. And you're like, oh my goodness, my head's spinning. What are you guys trying to tell me? Because like the movement, other than telling us that the world is big we're in and all these characters are in different places, there's not really any reason why we're spinning back and forth from these spots, because you could have literally just all had them in the same spot, other than it's cool and you can see how big the world is. Like, am I wrong?
Yeah, it's a challenge, I think, because I think they wanted to show a sprawling metropolis and kind of give you an idea this is like really a big conspiracy. But because of the 3-minute time limits, I think they settled on, it's like the best way for us to do this is to do these over-the-top movements that shows the big map, that we're moving from neighborhood to neighborhood to try to give a sense of scale. And they're like, it'll be easier than spending time discussing it, which they're correct about. But as a result, it is just like whiplash. You're just bouncing from neighborhood to neighborhood. I don't know the difference between them. I'm just like, all right, we're in a new neighborhood now.
Well, like I wrote them down. I could tell you the different neighbors, but like I didn't know the difference. Like, did you know
what were
the
their
difference?
names again? I didn't write them down. What are their names?
We've got, and I might pronounce some of these wrong, but you've got a Narima. That's the water purification facilities. You got Greenlight, Morningside, the mines, the agricultural territories, and the outside.
Oh, there's also New Canada, wasn't there?
Oh, if that was there, I missed it.
I do remember at some point one of them was just named like New Canada or something. Like, what?
Well, and the last thing I'll say, and I know we're jumping around a lot, they never mention where this is in the world, so you're not quite sure if this is even our world or an alternate version, because they never say like, oh, you're in Western Europe, or you're in North America, or you're in Northern Africa, or we just don't know, and you can't quite tell because they're cities, so you can't really see the weather or any sort of natural plants or anything like that would indicate.
Yeah. What I saw on the wiki or somewhere anywhere I was reading about it is that the theory is it's probably around the Great Lakes somewhere, just due to like some of the things that are mentioned and like the weather patterns. But it is like, it's meant to be, we're so far in the future.
Yeah.
The idea of states and nations have been lost.
Yeah.
Anyway, Cleveland gets into it by investigating these new devices, these wave, what did I call them? Wave units. And he's using a snitch in the black market to help him like find out who's making them and where they're getting distributed to. And it really just begins a series of really violent killings where he's just killing anyone who's doing any civil disobedience at all. Like, any minor civil disobedience ends in you being dead.
And maybe it's just me, but I actually found it was the strongest part of the show. I liked the idea of like a futuristic spy show where this guy's like, it's a James Bond thing, but he's very ruthless. He's very cold and calculated about it. He doesn't let his emotions get away. I thought it looked really cool. The violence was over the top, but I thought it was fun because it was a cartoon. And I really liked these parts. I thought they were like well executed and they were fun. It was honestly a lot of the world building where I was like, get back to killing someone. That's fun.
Well, there's a fun sequence midway through where there's another grid operator, much like Cleveland, but he's got a wife. This is we mentioned the pregnant woman. He's got a wife. She's pregnant now. he tells his knitting circle boss that he'd like to quit and raise his child, and then we get a sequence where Cleveland has to kill him basically, and it's like a fight between two spies. It's not bad actually. It's a fun little sequence.
Classic spy thing. One guy wants to leave the spies, the CIA or the circus or whatever it is, and they're like, no, we can't trust him, so we're gonna send another guy to kill him, and they have to fight him. Like, that's a great plot. That could have been the plot to this thing,
Yeah, it could have easily been the focus of it for sure. Because it's nice because the other guy's just like, can't you see, Cleveland? This is all nonsense anyway. Just like, let me go. And then Cleveland like pretends to say yes and then murders the man. It's like, we see a little bit of Cleveland and kind of how cold he is, how committed to the cause he is. It's interesting.
Yeah. Again, those scenes, I was like, you guys are doing it. These are actually really fun and really well done.
So as he kind of investigates / murders his way through Electric City, it's slowly revealed that the shadow people have come in who've created these radios. They're selling them to the population now via the gray market. And they're essentially promising that on Illumination Day, which I guess is a big celebration day coming up, that they're going to send a message that will change the world to these wave devices. So that's very kind of like midway through. We get the stakes now. There's a ticking clock. Illumination Day is coming. I think that was set up a little late, but I'm like, okay, at least we know something's coming.
I'm glad you said that because I think that was part of the feeling that I had of it being so disjointed and a little bit jarring, is that it took a while for this to settle a little bit and go like, okay, well, now that you know the world, now that you know the characters, here's the plot of it, where it felt like you were coming in a little bit like in season 6. Like, it's like, there's all these things you just need to know and you should already know it. And it's like, you almost feel like they could have really, really shrunk down the first half of this. Because when it starts getting going, you're like, okay, there is some stakes to this. How well it works and stuff, I'm not sure.
When they set the clock.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when they set the clock and they're like, Illumination Day is coming, something's going to happen. You're like, okay, great. Now I kind of know where we're headed. It just takes a while to get there because, there's a lot of world building, a lot of setup, a lot of characters to introduce. Doing it in 3-minute increments is quite difficult. So as a result, like when it starts really clicking, you're quite a ways into this 90 minutes.
Yeah, you're probably like, to be honest, like I didn't clock it, but probably about 45 minutes or so.
Could be a little later even.
Yeah.
Anyway, we mentioned the side character, the dead operative's pregnant wife. She goes on her own separate adventure late in this where she wants to escape Electric City to try to discover when she finds out her husband wasn't originally from Electric City. Like she's like, I don't know anything about him. I get this secret recording of him talking to his handler, and it turns out he's not from here. I didn't know he was a spy. And so she goes on a journey to get to the outside, which is, no one thinks there's anything outside of Electric City for some reason that's never clearly established. I don't know why that's never set up. It's never clearly set up.
I agree, because you would think it would be a thing where they're like, well, we have a big wall and it's for our safety.
The world's dead out there, or everyone's savages out there.
Yeah, or the military won't let you go because you'll die immediately. But you're right. They don't, for all the time they spend, but they don't spend any time on it.
Yeah. Someone just says, because at some point the wave radios are going, and they're like, where are these coming from? They're like, it's coming from the outside. These aren't normal. And they have a name like Ocean Dwellers. Like they have a weird name for like some like people they look down on. And I'm like, but I don't know what that means. And they don't establish it really. Yeah. But she goes on this journey to go outside. Honestly, not a difficult journey. Like there seems to be no obstacles to her doing it.
Yeah, she just has to like catch a train, sort of.
And then she like goes and they're like, you'll have to sign up for a work duty outside the walls. And so she walks up and they just let her walk out. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, and basically what she does is she finds outside of Electric City just seems to be another city that no one notices. It doesn't seem that far away from Electric City.
Well, yeah, because it doesn't, like, I think everyone, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think people are wearing slightly different clothing. Like they're wearing, because we didn't mention that.
Hard to tell for me.
Yeah, in a city where the resources are slightly different from ours, and as a result, the society has been built up a little bit different. Like clothing never seems to be a thing. Like people are wearing pretty much normal clothing or what seems like nice clothes. No one's wearing like tattered clothing or anything. And then when I think they go out to the outer rim or whatever they call it, and I think, and I could be misremembering this, but that they were wearing more like almost like fur trapper type stuff, like more furs and things. I could be wrong on that, but I think that was the distinction that was kind of made, like, oh, and you're different place.
It's supposed to be a subtle difference.
Yeah, but it was subtle because it wasn't like it was like she came in and was like, oh, these people are starving, or they're
living in a cave.
Yeah, it wasn't like that. It was just like, oh, like their hats.
They look like they're living equitably to Electric City.
Yeah, they're like, hey, remember how we wear red hats? They wear blue hats out there. Isn't that weird?
Well, the real big difference between the Outside City and Electric City is that Outside City has records and record players, and it blows this woman's mind.
Okay, interesting. They were like, oh, this is a thing, and it's a controlled society. Something like, but I'm like, but why? Why?
It's not been
Also,
established that this is an issue. And so when she hears a record, I'm like, okay, so they never found a record in Electric City?
I also thought a weird thing, and I know she only has 12 books, but seemingly more than one person has more than 12 books. No one in any of those books ever mentioned a record player.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Music playing. It just was one of those things where I was like,
odd.
Cool, I guess, but I don't know if it makes sense if you think about it for more than 3 seconds.
Well, I know they're trying to establish you're so far in the future these technologies are lost, but they wouldn't be that lost.
Yeah.
And clearly this one city found them no problem.
Yeah. And not only just, it wasn't like one. It was like,
they got a huge library.
Thousands of records. So it's like they're getting them from somewhere.
But essentially, this outside city, they're the ones attempting to destabilize the knitting circle. That's what we kind of learned from this subplot of this woman's journey. Which gets us to Illumination Day when it finally rolls around, which, Illumination Day is... Listen, we've had a whole thing about how we have to conserve electricity. That's what it's all about. And then when you reveal, it's like, Illumination Day is the day we just blast, like, massive lights into the sky to show how much electricity we have. I was just kind of like, this feels like a wasteful celebration, but okay.
It did. I think that was kind of the point of it, too, though. And maybe I'm...
A flex. It's a flex.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. It was like, we're constantly not only controlling how much the consumption of people's electricity, but to the point where we're killing people and we're controlling it in such... grotesque ways, but we'll still throw up this huge parade where we'll just, show things off in this sort of like ridiculous governmental waste of money. I think that's what they were going for, but I could be reading subtext that's not there.
No, I think you're not wrong. It's an interesting parallel because when we see the corrupt men who used to run the city, they were used to using electricity to run space heaters in their apartments that no one else had so they could stay warm and sleep with women. And there is a parallel, like, this is more a public good, like it's like we can all enjoy it, but nonetheless seems quite wasteful. So I think there's a parallel to show that like there are distinctions, there are similarities to these two corrupt governments.
But I'll say I was a little disappointed in what's it called, Illumination Day? Because they kept talking about it. It's this big thing, and you couldn't believe what's going to happen.
A lot of build up.
And then they built it up, and then they're like, hey, and what you see is like people are like, they're kind of celebrating outside, and they're like, it's like kind of a New Year's thing, but like very muted. And then you see some like spotlights go up in the air. And you're like,
What I like too is we're getting there and like we're finally at Illumination Day. Now we just have to wait for the night when we shoot the lights up. Like we'll call it Illumination Night. Why did you call it Illumination?
I didn't even think of that. That's you're very correct.
But this has probably annoyed me the most about it. Like this is like very like we're in the last like 20 minutes of this show now. Illumination Day is arriving. We've only heard about it 20 minutes before this, but we know this is what we're building to. This entire thing has been about knitting society Orwell, trying to use her grid op to get to the bottom of what's going on with these wave units, who's trying to destabilize their society and for what purposes. Illumination Day rolls around. Orwell and her and Cleveland get together and they're like, well, we haven't figured out what it's all about yet. Let's just let it happen, and we'll clean up afterward. And it's like,
that was weird,
excuse
right?
me?
That
excuse
was weird.
me?
Okay, I'm so glad, Luke. I think you and I are in the same wavelength on this show because I felt the same thing. It was like they're so controlled to the point where again, you were ordering contract killings. You're going to such horrific lengths to maintain power, regardless of whether your cause you see it as noble or as the ends justifying the means. But then they're like, something's happening on this day. Let's roll that dice and see what happens. I'm like, really?
It was just so funny because that's the whole plot. This is like the closest thing we've had to plot the whole time. It's like, this is happening. It's coming on Illumination Day. We have to do something about it. Illumination rolls around, and then we get a scene where she's just shrugged. She's like, oh, well, we didn't figure it out. Let's just see what happens, and we'll clean up afterward. I was just like, I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can do that. To my emotions, I mean. I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, also, I'll say also, it's a bit of a letdown because again we've like spent this whole time building up and then like Illumination, all this stuff's happening and you're like, oh, it's gonna be
the thing
grand, like
it's
buildings are gonna
destabilize
blow up.
It's gonna destabilize the entire knitting circle. It's society. It's all gonna fall apart. That's what they've been setting up to. And then what it is like the bad guys or the antagonists send it a radio broadcast, which we knew they were gonna send a radio broadcast, and the radio broadcast goes out to Electric City on their new radios, and the rebellion just says, hey, you're free from dictatorships now that you have a radio, and then they sing a song, and that there's nothing happens.
There's one more important thing, Luke.
Oh, what's that?
They send off their own signal outside of the wall.
Oh, that's right. they accidentally blow out the grid in Electric City, so Electric City's lights go down, and then they see the outside city also has its own big lantern it's shooting into the sky, which I guess tells everyone that there's another city out there. But I was just like, I think you could figure that out.
I think that was the what they were implying. But again, there wasn't really any dialogue, or we didn't see a scene where it was like, people are confused out there. So you're like, hey, now they know there's people out there. I'm like, oh, I assume they probably did.
How did they not? How did they not know that? That's like the thing we don't know.
Yeah. So, and it was a weird ending, because it was like, for something that felt, I'll say, had real care, and it felt like there was real effort made into building the world and the intricacies of this world. And then they're like, the ending, it was like a whiff, like, man, oh man.
What it felt like to me is like, we got all the way to the end, and this felt like the end of the first act of a story.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh man, we can't have 90 minutes. And I guess if this were just a 90-minute pilot to a series, okay, so now we're like, how are they going to fight? How are these two cities going to go to war now that people know there's another option? You know, they maybe could have set those ideas up a lot better, but like, that's at least like the start of something. But this is like, after 90 minutes of 3-minute episodes, we get to the beginning of the idea of the show, and I'm just like, that's too long.
It has a very thing that I think is probably leaving now in modern television, but became a bit of a trend the last few years, which is the first whole series of a show really acted as the pilot. And so you have a character who's like, let's say he's a detective. You're going to spend the whole first season getting him to be a detective. It's how they become something. And then by the episode 12, he's like, he puts the hat on. He's like, now I'm a detective, kid. And you're like, didn't you like that, guys? Well, season 2, we're going to give you the show we promised you. It was a little bit of that, of like, now that you invest in this world, don't you want to see what happens to Tom Hanks's character? I'm like, not really, I guess.
Yeah, it was just some trouble setting the stakes properly. I think partly due to the format of the show, the 3-minute episodes.
Agreed.
But I do think the build to that end was just like, no, this is the start of something. This can't be the end of the first season.
Yeah.
Unless you immediately have more episodes to build onto it. It just, I think is due to the nature of the structure of it, and then like how it was put out. And I think maybe the story itself, I think probably the story they were working on behind the scenes is probably much bigger, right? It clearly would have gone on for
that's what I was going to ask you.
Time.
Do you think this world they built, at least from what you've seen, do you think this is a comprehensive or interesting enough world where you would want to see more of this? Do you think there's enough that they built that they built on the ground floor that you're like, yeah, we could have adventures here, and this is a world I want to spend time in? Because I wasn't sure, to be honest. It wasn't that I was like, oh, I hated this, but I was like, do I need more of this? I don't really know.
I think that is the primary issue, is that so much time and care was spent just in the setup of like this city and kind of how it works and all the characters who live in it, and then very slowly like dropping some hints of an antagonist, and then very shortly at the end showing the end of the antagonist. I just don't know what the conflict is going forward. I believe they know. I believe they actually know, like, there's going to be all these factions, and there's actually going to be this big sprawling conflict. But because they spent so much time building the first step, I don't know what the next steps are. I believe they know what the next steps are, but I think knowing that would have made me more interested to see what was going to happen. Whereas now I'm just like, I don't understand what comes next. I think you do, but I don't know.
Well, it's funny. When I was finishing this, I thought, in some ways, a great parallel to this is another series we watched not too long ago, which was The City in the City. In the sense of, you have a world they have to build, and there's very high concepts you have to get across to the audience. Big conspiracy. You need characters to go through different journeys, and but at the same time, you need everyone to kind of buy into this world that is a bit of a challenge for you watching. Like that was. It was a real concept, and I thought
a lot of rules.
That show really, really nailed it. They took something that was a very difficult balancing act, and they really, really did well with it. Whereas I think just as much care and thought went into this, but they didn't really hit it out of the park because
the balance is wrong.
The balance is wrong, and they spent so much time on the setup and not enough on the mystery or the characters or the stakes. And so you have, like, I guess the world's cool, but like, do you care about Cleveland Carr? You don't. You didn't even know what his last name was, you know?
You get a very brief flashback of when he was in the police and everyone he knew died, and that's how he became a spy. But like, it's not enough. I was like, so?
Well, that's because not to get into too much of the weeds, but like earlier on, you see a flashback and you see like his gravestone, and you're like, oh no, I guess he like there's a real back history to it. And I was like, but do you care? It's not interesting to his character because that's not the point of the show. The show wasn't his journey. You don't really want him.
He's
to
a cog in a
much.
machine that's crushing everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Like even the love story, like I guess because they wanted him to be a sexualized creature in some ways, or maybe to create some sort of three-dimensional aspect to him, but it didn't accomplish that because you could cut all those scenes out. And sadly, that character of Hope, the newscaster,
I know,
you could have cut
what
her
a
out
waste.
too because a bad character. And it's like, oh, why not just have him what he is? He's a contract killer who's ends to a mean, and he's interesting in that aspect because what's really supposed to be interesting is the knitting society and their moral quandary of what they're doing and the values they have to put aside to accomplish the goals they think are worth accomplishing.
That is a challenge of all the side characters. Hope, I've got there's like 7 I've listed down here. They all have tiny little arcs where they each discover a little piece of the mystery, but at no point do they all come together and talk about them. No one ever like puts the puzzle together. It's just for the viewer to see a little new avenue of the mystery. But it's not, none of them are on a journey to like piece it together. They all just kind of like see a weird thing. They're like, that's weird. That's just for you, the audience, to like think about.
Yeah. So it was like, it's a thing where like, is this like good? Like,
It's interesting.
It's interesting,
but it's maybe not good.
It's you know what? That's a very good way of putting it, Luke. Yeah, it's interesting, but I don't think it's good.
This particular incarnation did not execute it well.
No. And I think to the question I asked earlier to answer it myself is I think there's something here. It's the execution. So if it was in a different format, like we've said now multiple times, I think it would have been a much better result we would have seen, you know?
I think if they had given Tom Hanks half-hour episodes like they gave Other Space and 12 of them, he would have done more with it than he could do with 90 minutes of 3-minute episodes.
Also, there's like a narration that happens at the beginning and the end. And it's like, just give him the narration. He doesn't need to be like more than that, you know? Like,
hey, Yahoo's not paying for this unless Tom Hanks is front and center.
I guess so.
Oh man. Well, something to watch anyway. It was an outlier, particularly for us on the podcast.
Our second cartoon.
It's only our second cartoon?
Yeah, we watched that other Steven Spielberg one about the future.
Yeah.
And he had a glove.
For some
and
reason,
stuff.
I thought there was another one, but maybe that's the only 2 we've watched.
I think it was 2, but again, please email in because our memories are not great.
We're losing them slowly.
Yeah, we've watched a lot.
All right, Jordan, what do you want to rate Electric City?
I have a number in mind, but I'll be honest, I feel a little guilty about it because, again, I didn't dislike this, but I'll be honest, I did find I got bored in part because of how long it took. And the thing is, I didn't want to be bored. I was like, no, I want to like this thing. But sometimes I'm like, oh, my mind's wandering because they're still talking about electrical coils.
Oh, because we're
and
watching a 3-minute episode of a character I can't tell from a different character, so I can't quite piece them together.
Yeah. And so, like, I think the world is like a cool idea, and the characters are cool ideas, or there's sketches of that, and there's an interesting something in there. But if I'm judging it just on what I actually saw, it's not that great a show. And like, it's one thing to have like great notes and great sketches and stuff, but like, really, did you make a good TV show? And I don't know if I can say that. So I'm going to go right down the middle and give this a 5 out of 10.
Interesting. Yeah, I kind of feel very similar, obviously, having talked about it. Part of me is just like, maybe I go 6 because it's just like, it's a better idea than like, but I'm like, maybe I go 4 because it's just a little below median in execution. So I think you're dead on. I think it actually is just a perfect 5 down the middle.
Yeah. And again, don't you feel bad? Because I'm like, it's not like it's a bad show. It's just like, eh.
You
like,
hate
why
to
is
see
this
someone's
here?
passion project go this way.
That's what it is. That's a very good point. You can feel that like he really likes this idea, and you're right. They probably have notes all over the place and details of all these things and how they work and what the history was.
Imagine
like,
seeing the world map they have.
Yeah, but it's like cool. In the end, it's kind of like reading an encyclopedia, you know?
Yeah, it just doesn't quite come together. Too bad.
It is too bad.
At any rate, that'll wrap it up for our coverage of Electric City. You can email us at gmail.com. I think, what did we ask for? The history of the Munsters?
Yeah, and if people are offended by Burt Lancaster being Mexican.
I mean, probably.
Probably. The answer is probably. I'm not saying I was comfortable watching it, but I like Burt Lancaster, you know?
He wasn't doing an accent, was he?
Kind of.
Oh, no. That's much worse than I thought.
I'll just say, he's also very tanned.
Oh, a lot going against him.
I know. That's why I can't recommend it.
And anyway, if you want to wipe that image out of your brain, you can go to Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Blue Sky. Our handle there is @ContinuumDrag, and we'll have some clips from Electric City. They're going to be gory. There's going to be some pretty gory
It's the best
clips.
part of it. The best part by far.
I mean, they're very lovingly animated shots of knitting needles getting stabbed through men's eyes.
And you know what actually I liked we didn't talk about is Tom Hanks's character, Johnny Tutu. He electrocutes people with a little laser gun. But what it does is
bring that up.
What it does is essentially turns people to raisin people. I loved it.
When he takes out that electric gun and he blasts the entire what looks like a workout studio full of stationary bikes. It's like a bunch of people working out, and he just blasts them all.
Yeah, and they all just end up being these like shriveled people. And I just thought, that's glory. That's where the show is, guys. That's where the money is.
Yeah, death at the spin class. That's what happens. All right, but that wraps it up for this episode of Continuum Drag. Listener, thanks for joining us, and Jordan, I'll see you on the next one.
I'll see you then.
Can't get enough Continuum Drag? Commission a bonus episode for charity.
Want us to watch an episode we missed after using the escape pod or during a best of run? No problem.
Is there an episode of a series we've never watched or a TV movie you want us to cover? You got it.
Wish we'd comment on your favorite movie, content, or other weird media? Sure, why not?
All you have to do is make a donation to one of the charities selected by past guests on our website.
We suggest a donation of $50 per television hour of content we're watching, but everyone's means are different, so give what you can.
Get all the details about bonus episodes for charity on our website, continuumdrag.podbean.com, or follow the links in our social media profiles.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Ontario, Canada, and Seoul, South Korea. Theme music by James Rick Seidler, produced by Jordan Dullick and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Hughes.